Thank you for listening to the Jeremiah Gunn Show. This is part 5 of The Real Race in Black and White. As I said, this is most important. I think it's the most important topic, theme, or idea. Remember our motto, great minds talk about ideas, small minds talk about events. Check that. Great minds talk about ideas. Average minds talk about events, and small minds talk about people. So we're talking about ideas, and this idea of race, it occurred when we were trying to put together the Declaration of Independence. Democrats didn't want it brought up, and it occurs today, where it drives everything. And I'm saying that ought not be, that shouldn't be the case, but let's understand why it is and who, like everything else, who the real racists are. So don't speed it up yet. Please, there's some good stuff coming. This is Jeremiah Gunn Show, dedicated to Charlie Kirk. It's on CSN. This is CSN. You're listening to CSN, the Common Sense Network, part of the ISI broadcasting system. We are broadcasting from behind enemy lines. I hope you don't get tired of hearing this because it's true. And you don't just say, well, I'm not into that, so it goes away. It doesn't go away if you don't do anything. That's true of cancer. And the cancer we're talking about today is the evil that men do that's destroying our country. It's not we little sheeple. It's we the people. It's us. When I say the word us, I'm talking about the United States. E pluribus unum, out of many people, one. And that is under attack. It's 1776. We're back to all the problems that led us to the revolution. All the same problems. Anyway, that's not what this is about. We're back to 1864. You think race was a factor in the white supremacist Democrats against the Republican constitutionalists who were trying to save the country and do abolition in the process? In 1984, where politicians divide people into two classes, tools and enemies. This is what Marxism does. And now that Marxism is unanimous, it's synonymous with the Democrat Party, here we go. So this is Professor Jeremiah Gunn. This is a gun-free zone. No, it's not. It's not a gun-free zone. And if you look at the transcripts, it'll spell my last name, G-U-N, like a gun. So maybe a little bit of an explanation. Gun is an Irish word. It means I was named after someone with the last name Gunn. It's Irish and it means war. We're at war. We're at war. Don't look at me. You know, it's not the first person to say it that loses. Because Jeremiah, first name, a Jeremiad, is the name means appointed by God, but it's become synonymous with somebody. He was called the weeping prophet. He walked around telling people what was going to happen if they don't straighten up and get it right. Right. This is not right versus left. It's right versus wrong. And Martin Luther King told us, you never have the right, no one has the right to do what's wrong. When someone asked him, why are you in jail? He said, why are you not in jail? That's the real question. So we got to get to the real questions here. This is not a gun-free zone. Every time someone is shot and killed, and the Democrats and the left and the communists and the Marxists start whining about gun control, as if it's always an inanimate object that causes our problems. It's not. So this isn't going to be a gun-free zone. So there's your trigger warning. Every mass shooting and even single shooting, active shooter, we have an active shooter. Active, I mean, I guess you never hear about the inactive shooters because they don't shoot anybody. So never could figure that one out in my corporate life. Anyway, every single shooting was in a gun-free zone, including Fort Hood, a military base. They had to call the police and say, "Oh, 911, help. All we are is a bunch of soldiers appointed by the government to shoot rifles and pistols and cannons and tanks. But not here at the bank or the PX, which is a shopping center on a military base. Hurry, how fast can you get here, police?" So you can do nothing about it. They put that guy on trial and they paid him a handsome salary while he was on trial. An Islamo-Nazi terrorist on your tax dollar. Well, that's only fair. Anyway, this program's dedicated to Charlie Kirk. You know the name Jeremiah Gunn. Gunn means war. We're at war. We have been since the Civil War. We have been since the Revolution. And you don't just say, well, it's not nice to say that, and that'll take care of it. When has that ever worked in any of our wars? Anyway, Jeremiah is a prophet. They called him the weeping prophet because he just broke his heart of what was happening. Jefferson said, "I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just, and his justice won't wait forever." But when you look up as typical AI, you look up Jeremiah, and it says a Jeremiad has come to mean a warning that's given. Okay, that's cool. But now it says a Jeremiah is a negative person who preaches doom and gloom. That'll happen to you if you try to tell the truth. You'll be dismissed. Anyway, this Jeremiah Gunn show, where we left off is, and I told you, please don't speed it up yet. I understand you're going to, and that's good. That's good. I do it myself when I listen to books, but this is something very important for this part 5, which is, I spell it F-Hive, F-Hive, 5, F the Hive, FDR, the Hive. If you're going to be a bee, that can be good. You're all working towards a goal. Utah is called the beehive state because the people work so hard to create their society. It can be a good thing, but it's not a good thing when you have a queen and you're just a drone and you just do what the queen tells you, whether that's Pelosi or Big Mouth Bass, if you're in California, the mayor, or Kamala, or Hakalugi in New York. It's not good to be a hive in that regard. It's called the hive mind. Sacrifice yourself for the bee. H for hive as in Hitler. Unless we understand who the real Nazis are, who the real Hitlers are, we're always going to be playing this George Orwell 1984 game of, like Malcolm X said, the media will get you to treat the innocent as guilty and the guilty as innocent. Are we not there? Anyway, here we go. This is from a movie called Am I Racist? By an artist named Mitchell David Lee and Bryson Gray. Have a listen, please.
I'm gonna show y'all how to stop being racist. You gotta do the work though. Okay, don't be a bigot. Post a black square. Drink Bud Light, bit blue dye in your hair. Tell yourself to put on the dress. Who cares what they wear? Ukraine flag and bio. Okay, we're almost there. Next, say y'all trans women are women. What does that have to do with race? Don't make a difference. Say Christianity is a white man's religion. And affirm how minorities are always victims. Do the work. Do the work. Do the work. If you want to stop being racist, do the work. Do the work. Do the work. Let go of your white privilege, do the work. Do the work. Do the work. If you want to stop being racist, do the work. Do the work. Do the work. If you want to stop being racist, do the work. Don't be early for work, that's white supremacy. And if you drink, make sure it's Hennessy. Math is racist too, so check the history. And if you don't see it, then check your memory. The nuclear family, well, that's white privilege. And you a racist if you don't quite get it. I guess everything is racist if someone white did it. So please don't be a bigot, make sure you do the work. Do the work. Do the work. If you want to stop being racist, do the work. Do the work. Do the work. Let go of your white privilege, do the work. Do the work. Do the work. If you want to stop being racist, do the work. Do the work. Do the work. If you want to stop being racist, do the work. Now a better you is emerging. I mean, who cares who is really hurting? And you should know that saying black people can't get IDs really does make you a better person. Now you can finally understand me. White people are racist and black people can be. I'm glad you broke up your nuclear family and put a BLM sticker on your Camry. Word. Do the work. Do the work. If you want to stop being racist, do the work. Do the work. Do the work. Let go of your white privilege, do the work. Do the work. Do the work. If you want to stop being racist, do the work. Do the work. Do the work. If you want to stop being racist, do the work.
That is from a movie called Am I Racist that Matt Walsh did. That you really should see it. If you can see that, if you can see a movie called Uncle Tom 1 and 2, done by the fabulous sage from South Central, Larry Elder, you really should. You really should see those. Important stuff. So where does everything come from? I think everything comes from the word beginning. Let's begin at the beginning. And what do we have in the beginning? If you believe in what's taught as history at the UC campus down the street, that doesn't really believe in God, but Judeo-Christian, in the wisdom literature Judeo-Christian system, which a lot of blacks and whites claim to be a part of, what is it? It's a liar. The father of all lies, a narcissist, someone who's anti-God, telling you to believe the lie. And mankind believing it and falling, starting with womankind. And so when there's lies today, they're no less evil, they're no less pernicious, they're no less destructive than they were in that. If you want to call it a parable, fine. I don't care. I don't have to find DNA or archaeological evidence of the fruit that they ate to believe in what that story is trying to tell us. So don't believe the lies. And we talked about what does the wisdom literature say? What did Martin Luther King say? Sometimes he was quite consistent with it. Same with Malcolm X. A lot of times. Well, it says that if you don't love your brother that you can see, you cannot love God that you can't see. So we kind of ended on one lie. In the 1970s, there was a series called Roots. It was all the rage. There was a little wave that went through this country, at least, of miniseries. And it probably sold around the world too. But there was one called Roots. It was written by Alex Haley. And, in that song, they said that Christianity is a white man's religion. Well, so is Islam. And Islam, that's one of the big lies. Alex Haley portrayed all the Christians in the movie as hypocrites, church-going, Bible-thumping hypocrites that raped the black women and sold the black men and tortured them and mutilated them and everything else. Then these good Africans took Islamic names. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, but this was a lie. Lies run Hollywood. Lies run the Democrat Party. And, so people grew up with that. How did he depict slavery? They went into huts and they grabbed LeVar Burton, and his name was Kunta Kinte, and they called him Toby, and they dragged him out of his hut. He was just like the native Siberians. He was just playing patty cake and trying to have a nice day, and they came in and grabbed him and took him. Not so. They were captured by other black Africans, and they were sold into slavery primarily by the religion that treated everybody as slaves, white, black, brown, yellow, whatever. The one that took over a lot of the world with the sword, the white Islam. So I don't know. You're going to tell me that Muhammad and all those people were brown or something? Then I guess, why don't you have more sympathy for the Israelis? I don't know. You can't work your way out of this one. Okay. So anyway, Roots was a big deal. All-star cast, big thing. This is where Hollywood says they're sorry for what we did. One time Bill Clinton said he apologized for slavery. He formally apologized. Well, that's good because it's coming from a Democrat, which the word synonymous with slavery, still today. This is the lie that you got to wake up from, or it ain't going to end. Real Republicans have done everything they can to make this a republic instead of a democracy where you have slavery. There was no switch. Anyway, Alex Haley was interviewed later, and he said, it was all BS, or CS as I call it, cow shite. Yeah, it was. He said, I wanted to create a myth for our people. Well, good job, Alex. Guy was a Navy veteran, I think. Good job. You created a myth. You created a lot more than that. Hollywood, when they lied about Indians, Native Americans, Native Siberians, I call them Anaks, migrant Native Asian communities. That's what they were. They made, they went through a period where they were bad, and the cowboys and settlers were good. Sometimes that was true. A lot of times that was true. But then they flipped around, and they have to make phony Sesame Street fake stories, which is what Roots was. So anyway, let's talk about this idea of Islam. We sent Marines to the Muslim part of the world to try to free people. Somalia, the Middle East, Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, to the shores of Tripoli as the Marines. Some of our greatest heroes are black Marines. They went to the shores of Tripoli to fight against the Muslim slave traders, pirates, thieves, murderers. But then when they are encouraged by fools like Alex Haley to believe the lie and to repudiate Christianity, what were white Christians to blacks? They were the ones who created abolition. We did a show on the Battle Hymn of the Republic, not the democracy, the Republic. And let us, as he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free. The civil rights activists made that one of their themes. But the Democrats don't want to hear that. Their NPR and all their other public relations outlets tell you that's not true. So Islam, so in order to repudiate white man's religion, the thing that freed them, white Christians, get a couple books on abolition. Read about the Underground Railroad. Seek the truth. From William Wilberforce, a movie called Amazing Grace. Rent that movie. Watch it. It was white Christians that created Liberia, that gave their lives. John Brown gave his life and his son's life and his friend's life trying to free the slaves till the Democrats took him out and then started the Civil War. So they have this idea they're going to repudiate the white man's religion, the one that freed him, created the schools, HBCUs, and other schools that led up to the HBCUs and the Tuskegee Airmen Institute, et cetera, et cetera. All white Christians, Republicans, not Democrats. Nope, not Democrats. So you've been sold again. You've been sold the lie. So I'm going to pick a Muslim name, and it was in this Afrocentric period where, Shelby Steele talks about he and his wife went to Algeria and they met with Black Panthers that were in exile, and they kind of realized this is nothing. This ain't going to go anywhere. This ain't going to do anything. So let's talk about Islam a little bit, because they picked these names, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples. But do you know there's more slaves in Africa today than were ever brought here? Did you know that this is just a kind of a side statistic, but it's important. 95% or higher of the African slave trade went south. They brought them south of Florida, not the United States. 90x%. When Brazil hosted the Olympics recently, was it 2016? They had a whole thing about they're sorry for, a lot of their opening pageantry was about racism, was about slavery. Same thing. No, Lincoln pointed that out. No white supremacy by the Democrats, no slavery. It's not possible. It's not possible to do it unless you believe in white supremacy, which is what all Democrats did, North and South. So people pick these Islamic names as if that's going to repudiate their saviors, the white Christians who started and gave their lives for the abolition movement, including Lincoln and all the Republicans that followed him, the great heroes. So, Islam. Did you know there's more slaves in Africa today than were ever brought here? I was interested in reading about Liberia. The story of Liberia is that the British and the Americans created a colony, never been done before, to bring the freed. They would intercept the slave ships, and they would drop them off in Liberia and help them set up a country. The capital was called Christopolis, and then they changed it to Monrovia because they wanted to honor Monroe, who had the Monroe Doctrine and was, now they call it the Don Roe Doctrine because he's so much like him. Sorry. Truth hurts sometimes. It's hard for it to hurt because you almost never get it. You'll get it here. So I'm reading about Liberia and it's other Burkina Faso. I mean, the names of the countries in Africa change all the time. But what's going on in Africa right now? It says, Burkina Faso or whatever, forgive me, whatever other country this was around there, Suriname, whatever. Well, one of the problems they have, it'll say it if you look it up. Even AI, even Google will admit, if you look it up, they have problems with slavery. I mean, probably 20,000, 100,000 are slaves in just that little tiny country. Who's doing the slavery? Did you say Islam? Yeah. Same one it's always been. It's just like Hoke told Miss Daisy when she goes, who would do such a thing? Blow up the temple, blow up the synagogue, blow up the Jewish temple. Who would do it? And Miss, very wise, sage driver named Hoke, played by Morgan Freeman, he says, Miss Daisy, it's always the same. But there's always the same people that took over. It's in their religion to be slavers. They don't care what color they are. But anyway, what is the scourge of Africa today? It's slavery. That's why all this back to Africa crap, Afrocentrism of, Oprah goes over there. I'm going to find out where my roots are. Why? Man, I'm Irish, partly. And what the English did to the Irish, do I have some affinity for that? Especially when the fact that it was Africans who sold me to the Muslims. And now they're joining their religion. But to the idea that it's going to repudiate, you see the madness? They join it to repudiate the descendants of people who called Harriet Tubman Moses and Sojourner Truth. What a name. And Abraham Lincoln, Father Abraham. And Christians, Judeo-Christian religion. They embrace the Bible. Now they're going to turn to the slavers as their religion in order to repudiate the white man's religion. Well, you get that about as wrong as possible. About 180 degrees out of phase, as we used to say in data communications. Completely wrong. Completely Karen Bass backwards. Okay. There are more slaves in Africa today than were ever brought here. In the 1970s, while Alex Haley was cranking out Roots and living large in a mansion with a lie, a very destructive lie to his own country that he swore an oath to defend and protect the Constitution of. In the 1970s, 100 years after the Civil War, the number of people who emigrated here from Africa, black, surpassed the number that were ever brought here as slaves. And remember, there's more slaves in Africa today than were ever brought here, total. And you get all these lies about just these deflections about how millions died on the journey over here and millions, they're just lies. Whatever number it is, it wasn't a Christian, it was a communist. It was a Marxist, it was a Bolshevist who said one death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic. And if you're going to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. So Karen Bass, the quote, black, unquote, mayor running for mayor of Los Angeles, most incompetent, she's a communist. The one that's running against her, Bernie Sanders, this Indian woman that's running against, communist. Mom dummy, Islamo-Nazi communist. And you get, us African Americans, we're okay with that? We're okay with that? So let's recap that. There's more slaves in Africa today than were ever brought over here. In the 1970s, the number of people who willingly emigrated to America to become immigrants passed up the number of slaves brought. So, we have guys like Keith Ellison in Mogadishu. He was the first person sworn into Congress using a Quran. And then there were rumors about Obama using a Quran, but Obama knew he had to pretend that he wasn't a Marxist and he wasn't a Muslim. He had to pretend, so he didn't use it. So that's a lie. But Keith Ellison, I think his name was, first one to swear in on a Quran. And he used Thomas Jefferson's Quran. He checked it out of the Library of Congress or the National Archives, whatever. So what? Thomas Jefferson, who sent the Marines to the shores of Tripoli to defeat Muslims, you think he was a Muslim or something? Because he had a Quran? He had a lot of books. When you go to his house, Monticello, it's painted on the wall, some of his quotations. One of them is, "I cannot live without books." He wanted to understand. He wanted to know your enemy. Yeah, he might have had some kind things to say about it, and he had some unkind things to say about the Bible, but not terrible. So, there's more slaves in Africa today than were ever brought here. And they're enslaved by black. It's black on black crime, terror, just like it is today. That's why we have to go there and try to save them from themselves. And the number of people who willfully immigrated, I've known some of them. They're beautiful, beautiful people. Nigerians, Christians, mostly Christians. Ayan Hirsi Ali, she's a fellow at the Stanford Institute. Check her out. So, a couple of just sort of anecdotes here. I'm in the living room watching a Laker game. My wife is in the kitchen, and where she should be. A racist would say. Anyway, sorry. Sometimes you just have a little fun and people go nuts. But anyway, my wife's in the kitchen doing something, and Chick Hearn, the fabulous, the greatest announcer in history, he's interviewing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And they're talking about Magic Johnson, who kind of just got there. And Chick Hearn is always trying to be deferential and always trying to be respectful. He says to Jabbar, "You don't call him Magic, do you?" And Jabbar says, "His parents named him Irvin." And my wife shoots out, "Your parents named you Lou." And I don't know if I turned the TV off. I just said, "God bless you, honey. I didn't even know you knew that." Well, when he came to UCLA, which is the University of Caucasians lost among Asians, and played for John Wooden and revered him. I've read a bunch of books about Jabbar. He says his parents named him, very self-righteous, hypocrite. His parents named him Irvin. And my wife says, "Your parents named you Lou." Well, in fact, they named him Ferdinand Louis Alcindor. His parents were from the Caribbean. His dad was a New York City cop. But he has to change his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, which means like Muhammad Ali. I'm the greatest thing ever and God loves me. They picked this out. And Jabbar actually said, he was an intelligent guy. I mean, he did research. Intelligent means you do research on things. You don't just make them up, supposedly, like intellectuals do. But he said he knew in reading these bios about him. I've read a lot of books by him, especially, the ones where he praises John Wooden, this Christian mentor who took him under his wing from New York. When we came from Power High or whatever, and national phenomenon, he came to UCLA. His name was Ferdinand Louis Alcindor. They called him Lou Alcindor. And he had to change his name to repudiate the white Christian name. And Jabbar said, "I knew from my research that the odds were very low that my people, that I came from, my roots were like Muslim. Most of the slaves were sub-Saharan. Why won't anybody tell you this? And now what's happening in Africa? The Sahara is moving down, moving down, threatening every way of life of these people that, in some cases are Christian today, but were, I guess, animists, worship trees and other things. Animist means someone who worships it's a religion that worships inanimate objects and animals and things like that. Whatever. So there's a hypocrite for you. His parents named him Irvin. Oh, wow. So, another great UCLA Laker was named Keith Wilkes. He was from Ventura. I lived up in that county for a while. I actually met him at a 10K race I was in. He was the starter. We're about the same height. He was only like 6'6", I think. But they called him Silk Wilkes. That was his name. Well, he changed his name from Keith to Jamal. He didn't go the full Abdul Rahman, which was Walt Hazard, changed his name to Abdul Rahman, another UCLA great, I believe, a guard. So he just went with Jamal Wilkes. Okay, so what are you doing this for exactly? Because you want to repudiate the white man's religion by taking on Islam, which wasn't your religion, which. And so somebody asked him to explain, why did you keep your last name? And he said, well, my dad is a pastor. His dad was a Presbyterian or something up there in Ventura County. Yeah. And so I don't want to dishonor my dad by taking away his last name. And I just thought, that's awesome, Keith. You probably would honor him more by keeping his religion that he devoted his life to than just his last name. which is a slave name anyway, to your point and the point of everybody who's ever made it, from Malcolm X. Malcolm X used X because he said it's the unknown variable. I don't know what my last name was. So today's zeros are dishonoring their ancestors, which were, watch a documentary like Eyes on the Prize. These were great heroes in America, starting with Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Crispus Attucks, if you want to go back to the Revolution, the Boston Massacre. So what are these people today in the government, education, mediatainment complex? That's who's running our lives. Those are the plantation owners of Uncle Sam's plantation. Just the other day, Magic Johnson. His parents named him Irvin. Geez, all he took was a nickname, like a baseball player, Jolton Joe or the Splendid Splinter. All he did was take that name. He let him give him the name Magic because he was. It was magic what he did. Prestidigitation, sleight of hand. He didn't take a Muslim name to honor the slavers who put his ancestors in and brought him here. So he endorses Mayor Big Mouth Bass, Karen, the ultimate Karen, the most incompetent, unqualified, disqualified person to ever hold that office. And Tom Bradley, a former UCLA athlete and police chief, was the mayor a long, long time ago, before it was, before blacks would embrace people like Larry Elder, the sage from South Central. Oh, he can't be governor. It has to be the poster boy of white privilege. Joe Biden, too. Gavin Newsom, because LA Times has to run a hit piece on him, just like they're running a hit piece on Spencer Pratt. The LA Times. Journalism. Democracy dies in darkness. Right. So Magic Johnson endorsed, it's multi-millionaire from Bel Air, where OJ lived, or Brentwood or whatever. He endorses her because he said she's done a great job with the homeless. I mean, what is Magic Johnson doing? What did she do recently? God, I don't know, we can't even get into it, but she's saying that she wants to have comprehensive health care to give meth addicts teeth because they can't go on job interviews if they don't have nice teeth. And here he comes, Magic Johnson, co-owner of the Dodgers, multi-millionaire who owns theaters and, oh God, businesses. The racist Jerry Buss, owner of the Lakers, got him into all this capitalism, as well as the Playboy Mansion. The rest is history. So, LeBron James, King James, I guess you don't mind that nickname, which kind of honors Christian heritage. He said when this same thing, George Floyd, when all that stuff, he said blacks are literally hunted. He has like a $40 million mansion with compound with gates and everything. Yeah, blacks are literally hunted every day in America. That's what he said. And then he turned his back on all the Chinese slaves today's slaves in China, by defending China against people who are arguing for human rights. But LeBron, blacks are literally hunted. I mean, are you hunted for your autograph? Do you think it makes a difference? Yeah, they are literally hunted by other blacks. Black lives don't matter. So the lady that moved in near you, that started BLM as a Marxist, lesbian Marxist, that I repeat myself. Really? Blacks are literally hunted? Well, they are. Yeah, in Chicago, every day. I think every day a black is shot by another black, or a brown, or vice versa. Every day. Black Lives Matter? Why, Chicago is all in on that. Malcolm X. Man, read some of his quotes. We could do a whole show on his quotes. But he was killed by a Muslim cult, Nation of Islam. The beloved darling Muhammad Ali in the Olympics when they were held in Atlanta, was it 90? 96. He carried the torch when he was suffering from his Parkinson's or whatever. I mean, people love him. Watch his show when he's a young man talking about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, this cultic shyster, salesman, created this cult that even Islam doesn't recognize. Those are the guys that killed him. And Calypso Louis Farrakhan, he was involved in him getting killed. He was killed by other blacks and by the Muslim cult because he started to tell the truth. But watch Muhammad Ali. He said the worst possible things you could ever say about white. Watch William F. Buckley films on YouTube. It was called Firing Line, ironically. But Muhammad Ali's on there saying that, whites are just horrible. Whites are the enemy of... And Buckley's kind of asking him, what? Whites are the enemy of mankind. This Elijah Muhammad guy, he taught that the white race was invented by a mad scientist. I'm not making this stuff up. What did Martin Luther King say? Learn, baby, learn. So you can earn, baby, earn. So what happened? They hoodwinked us. Us. When I say us, it's the United States. All of my heroes are black. Watch Carol Swain on PragerU. Prager, Prager University. He does all these little 5-minute videos that are fabulous. And he has an interesting idea. Jews talk about Judaism. Blacks talk about blacks, slavery, etc. But she debunks the whole thing about there was a switch where somehow mysteriously LBJ, the king racist plantation master, that was about the time it switched. All lies. She just debunks every single one of it. The Democrat Party is the enemy of the United States, the Constitution, and in the process, Americans of whatever color they are. Choose you this day who you'll serve. There's always two choices. Africa, roots. Why would I revere Ireland or England or Belgium, where my people came from? Because of the dirt there, like Robert E. Lee revered Virginia? What? Why would I be so in love with or pretend to be, and let Nancy Pelosi and Schumer and all these fools put on kente cloth just to make fun? Somebody found out that the kente cloth they put on, they were the biggest slavers of all. I mentioned the other day that there's a movie called Amistad. It's a true story where John Quincy Adams defended these guys who had a mutiny on a slave ship. And the head guy, Chinque, I want free or whatever, he learned English to be able to say in the trial. When they were acquitted, they were sent back to Africa. When he went back to Africa, he became a slave trader. Did they do an epilogue in the movie to tell you that? No. Blacks are Americans' heroes. They gave us our greatness. There's so many black heroes. And I'll tell you who it is and who it isn't. It's not Neil deGrasse, Snake and deGrasse Tyson chicken, but it's Ben Carson and Herman Cain over Obama, and it's Alan Keyes and Clarence Thomas over Biden, and Magic Johnson and Kamala Harris, who isn't even black until it's time. The Black Panther Party. Black Lives Matter to the Democrat Party about every 4 years, sometimes 2 years. Yeah, I watched a little commercial for a guy. There's a black guy walking through this hood in L.A. He actually lives there, and he's trying to be the congressman that represents it. And no, it's Maxine Waters, who lives in another area, living large, very wealthy. Nice place. He goes, this is her place. Kind of like Spencer Pratt shows you Karen Bass's place. And this other Indian woman, interloper, the communist. As long as you're communist and a woman, then you're in. But just mention the word MAGA or Trump, and that gets you disqualified. That's how they always disqualify. So, yeah. You have to, back to Sun Tzu, know your enemy. Know your enemy. Yeah, I had a friend, my best friend, a couple of corporations ago. He was kind of like, went to college at this school that was sort of they had a campus in Nairobi, and they had a campus in, I don't know, Morocco, Italy, London, and here. It was in a kind of an international university, that was called. And there was a lot of blacks there from Africa and a lot of blacks from here. So African Americans and African Americans, but some from here and some from Africa. And he told me that he noticed that the African American blacks at this university didn't really care too much for the African American blacks, because he said they were loud, they were rude, uncouth, all these things that other countries say about Americans. You wouldn't necessarily expect them to not say the same thing. I saw this little documentary about a guy from Africa, a woman from Africa comes over here. They're huddling in this little apartment in a tough part of town. Husband dies. He's a taxi driver. He dies. And guess what? The son, all these African communities do is keep their kids indoors. And they're not Muslim, mostly Christian, but they keep their kids indoors because they don't want them to get killed by, guess what? This documentary was showing the funeral of the boy, the young boy, because he was killed. He's just standing in the park. Wasn't shooting up, wasn't smoking dope, wasn't nothing. But you can't stand in the park. He gets shot in a drive-by, and so I think it was PBS, showed the funeral. You got to know your enemy. You got to wake up. Choose you this day who you will serve. There's only two races, decent and indecent. And the Democrat Party ain't decent. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much.